Today's first reading is coming to us from Psalm 32, 1 through 7. Blessed is the one whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord does not count against them, and in whose spirit is no deceit. When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy on me, my strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. Then I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. Therefore, let all the faithful pray to you while you may be found. Surely the rising of the mighty waters will not reach them. You are my hiding place. You will protect me from trouble and surround me with songs of deliverance. Our gospel reading today is coming from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 4, verses 1 through 11. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, If you are the Son of God, tell those stones to become bread. Jesus answered, It is written, Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. If you are the Son of God, he said, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Jesus answered him, It is also written, Do not put the Lord your God to the test. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in their splendor. All this I will give you, he said, if you will bow down and worship me. Jesus said to him, Away from me, Satan, for it is written, Worship the Lord your God and serve Him only. Then the devil left him, and angels came and attended him. This is the word of our Lord.
Praise be to God.
Let's pause for a moment there. Lord, may the words of my mouth and meditation from my heart be pleasing and acceptable to you, O Lord, for you are my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. Today's focus is on the power of temptation. Temptation has been a part of our lives going all the way back to the days of Adam and Eve, hasn't it? And it's been there through the Old Testament. And temptation is with us today. Jesus certainly faced some tough decisions in this text when he was confronted by Satan. And unfortunately, I believe that Satan is still alive and well in our world today, and is showing up, and he is showing up in some very ugly and frightening times that we live in at the present time. We've all been tempted. I don't think there's anyone here that can say, I've never been tempted in my lifetime to do wrong. I've never been tempted to go astray. I've never been tempted to ignore what God says in this verse or this chapter, for I'll take my risks with something else that is said and take scripture out of context. We've all been tempted. But in Jesus' case, in looking at the text, I think Jesus was tempted, yes, but he was not persuaded. Okay, there's a difference. The question comes in how you and I deal with Satan's power when we are confronted. I truly think that there's nothing Satan wants more than to gain control over you or over me or over his church. And I think he's doing an awful lot today trying to overcome and gain power over God's people. So, do we try to deal with it on our own, whatever the temptation is that we're confronted with? Do we try to overcome it by ourselves, rely on our own power to thwart Satan off? Or do we call on the power of God and rely on God? There's a big difference, isn't there? Because I know that I'm weak. And I can fall if I'm doing it by myself. I'm no different than anybody here. It's hard sometimes when we're going through these things, rather than making a snap decision, it's hard sometimes to be able to think about what God would want me to do. How does God want me to react? We must also realize it's not a sin to be tempted. I want to make sure that you catch that. It's not a sin to be tempted. Tempting others or giving into the temptation is what falls into the category of sin. When we tempt somebody else, or when we finally when we're tempting others, or when we give in to temptation. That's where sin is. Now, immediately prior to today's reading of Jesus going into the wilderness, if you'll remember, was the story of Jesus being baptized. It was an awesome experience in the life for Jesus. In fact, it says in Matthew 3, the last verse of chapter 3, verses of chapter 3, as soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water, and at that moment heaven opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and lighting on him, landing on him. And a voice from heaven that said, "This is my Son, whom I love, and with whom I am well pleased." Now, how often I hear the stories, in fact, I've had experiences in my own life, where people have had an exciting, a very close moment with God. Might have been at a retreat. I know the kids at Ice Camp, we haven't heard from them yet. We're going to be hearing from them in another week or two. But how quickly Satan seems to attack after we've had a really great moment. Now, I recall one time I had a really great experience on a men's retreat. Matter of fact, I'd even been helping lead that retreat. I was still part-time in ministry. I was full-time in ministry at that point. I was still part-time. I was called to a meeting in Indianapolis. It was a nasty, snowy day. I drove from Fort Wayne. I got all the way down to Indianapolis only to find out the meeting had been canceled. The boss in Michigan said he couldn't make it. And we didn't know until we arrived in Indianapolis. So I turn around on this nasty day when I see cars all off the road, and I turn around and I head for home. I got to Gas City, and I was in desperate need of gas at that point. My tank was empty. I pulled into the pumps, and I turned one on, and it didn't work. So I pulled over, got to another pump, and it didn't work. And I finally got the attention of the attendant. And I said, "Any of these pumps work out here today?" "No, they're all frozen, they're shut down." "Wow, this would be a great place to open up a gas station." I turned around and stormed out the door, ringing, I'm sure, making her day not real pleasant. And I'm filled with anger. And when I drove away from the pump, I realized I had not taken the hose out of the side of my car. And you know how far those things will stretch. Come on. I just had this powerful weekend. I had seen lives changed. I've been involved in that. And all of a sudden, here I am. I'm confronted. You know, I think it's moments like that when we've had a close moment with Jesus Christ that Satan comes knocking on the door the loudest. You ever experienced it in your life? A time when you finally have made a strong faith commitment, and all of a sudden you're hit with a major challenge. And you make some irresponsible, stupid mistake, some spur-of-the-minute decision without even thinking, and you find yourself walking through the valley and your faith stretched, almost being shattered. Matthew 4, 2, 3, and 4, which Tom read it a moment ago, but I'm going to read it again. Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days, 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter said to him, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." And Jesus said, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but on the very word that comes from the mouth of the Lord." After a time of fasting, Jesus was in a physically weakened state. Who wouldn't be? 40 days. The tempter, as the Bible says, Satan, attacked when he was at his most vulnerable point, tried to get Jesus to pursue his mission by some means other than God's means. I don't know what goes on in your lives, but perhaps your physical need, maybe your physical need is, perhaps your physical need is a different need. Perhaps your need is a sexual desire, a financial, or maybe somebody here who's got a gambling problem, or maybe drugs or alcohol, or cheating on your taxes, or not paying taxes at all. I don't know how, but I have one parishioner in one of my churches, elderly couple, long since retired, they had never paid taxes. And they were proud of it. They just had never filled out any forms. As far as federal government was concerned, I guess they didn't exist. I don't know how to get away with that. Whatever it is, you know what it's like to have temptation threaten your relationship with God. Did you know in this first few verses, and in the remaining parts of this story, every word that came from Jesus' mouth was a quote from Scripture, from the book of Deuteronomy. In this case, Jesus' response, man does not live by bread alone. You can look it up. Deuteronomy 8, verses 2 and 3. Now we have to be careful that we don't allow ourselves, and whatever special gifts we've been given, or our status in the world, or our power, as a means of obtaining benefits solely for ourselves, without considering the impact that our actions have or would have on other people or on God's plans for the world. You see, Jesus didn't only know God's word, he obeyed it. Romans 14:7 says, "For none of us lives for ourselves, and none of us dies for ourselves alone." To me, that text is saying every decision that you and I make every day, every moment of our lives, every year of our lives, every decision we make throughout our lifetime has a bearing on somebody. Somebody is going to be impacted by what you do. That gal at the gas station, she was impacted by what I did that day. She may well remember me, even though it's been years past. Oh, yeah. You know, we too need to respond to the temptations that you and I face by using God's word. by relying on his teachings. Matthew 4, verses 5 and 6. Then the devil took him to a holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. If you are the Son of God, he said, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you in their hands, so you will not strike your foot against a stone. You know, this may well have been one of the hardest temptations that Jesus faced. Because this time, even Satan quoted the scriptures. We can look it up word for word. Psalm 91, verses 11 and 12. You know, scripture can be used sometimes in very hurtful and wrong ways. I think we have to use caution in listening to other people who try to misuse God's teachings or use God's word for their own personal gain. I'm going to pick on a couple from years ago, people like David Koresh. Remember those stories? People like James Jones, who was born and raised in Winchester, Indiana. You've got to think about it. I wonder how many of us have ever been tempted, as Jesus was that day, to put God to the test. God, if you'll do this for me, if you'll just get me out of this mess that I created on my own, then I promise that I'll do whatever. Have we ever been there? Careful. This is what you promise. God may hold you to your word. What is faith? I think one of the definitions I've seen on faith, I've seen several, but one of them that I like, faith believes in God's promises, trusts in God's promises, and accepts the fact that God is with us regardless, catch that, regardless of our circumstances. Faith believes, faith believes God's promises, trusts his promises, and accepts the fact that God is with us regardless. I think we have to follow Jesus' example in Matthew 4:7. What Jesus said, it is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test. Deuteronomy quote. The final temptation that Jesus faced, Matthew 4:8-9. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world. And said, all this I will give to you if you will bow down and worship me. Jesus said, away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him. Just worship me. years of difficult ministry and end up hanging on a cross? Come on, Jesus, it makes no sense. Take me up on my offer. You can have all the glory, all the authority, all the splendor. Right now. I'll give it to you. Today. Worshiping and serving a power other than God continues to be one of the greatest temptations that you and I face. How? By placing a higher value on something else. On possessions, on money, on jobs, on social status. Trusting in those more than we do with the Word of God. Think about it for a minute. Where do you spend your money? Where do you spend your time? What are you reading? What are you watching in front of the TV set? Are you spending hours upon hours on the TV set? Are you stuck on your phone like I am? Texting and reading Facebook. I need to throw it in the trash for Lent. Whatever it is, wherever it is that you're spending your time, or wherever it is you're spending your money, whatever it is, be careful. Because that has the great possibility of quickly becoming your God. Matthew 4:10. Jesus said to him, "Away from me, Satan." Think about the temptations that you and I face. Whatever it is you answer. I already said that. When we think about the temptations that Jesus faced, it's important to remember our covenant with God. We have to hear the continual call of God to come and be His children, to live in covenant with Him. I think that's where the Holy Spirit comes in and taps us on the shoulder and says, "Hey, don't go there. Don't do that." Think about how Jesus made it through those temptations. He made it through because He remembered who He was. Well, He knew all along, no doubt about that. But between His baptism and His temptations, He heard the words of God saying, "This is my Son, whom I love, with whom I'm well pleased." And He never forgot it. That voice of God, His Father, calling Him. It could be that this is my daughter. Think about that. This is my daughter whom I love, with whom I'm well pleased. You know, there's a story, and I'm going to wrap up here. There's a story about a young boy whose behavior was terrible. His mother had her hands full. She couldn't control him. And suddenly the mother noticed a change in him. Something was different. He suddenly seemed to be making an effort to be different, to be kind, to be thoughtful. And one day she decided to ask him, "What in the world is going on with you?" And he said, "Well, the other day at church, the pastor came up and put his hand on my shoulder and said, 'You know, you are one fine young man. I like you.'" And the boy said, "I knew he would be disappointed if he found out the truth, that it really wasn't that way. So I decided to try to be one." And And the young boy said he never forgot it. He said it was like the voice of God calling him. When we find ourselves being led down the wrong path, remember, God has called your name. This is my son. This is my daughter, whom I love, and in whom I am well pleased. Remember, because God has called your name, you have the power, the ability to make it through whatever you're facing. If you will trust solely in Him.